This is the Always Direct podcast, and we talk with movers and shakers of this world to learn about the ups and downs they went through to get where they are now. Let's get started with the show.
What's going on, Lance? I want to thank you for coming on the Always Direct podcast. My name is John Rayon, and on this podcast, we try and talk with movers and shakers in this world to see what they did to get where they are now. Lance Graulich of Ion Franchising, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, John. Happy to be here.
Thanks. So just the armor represents having to have emotional stuff. You have to have steel around you constantly because you're constantly being bombarded with negativity, and you got to be super damn aggressive if you want to kill that gazelle. You have to go after it. It's not going to come to you. So that's the saber-tooth tiger behind me, in case you're wondering.
Love it.
All right. So, Lance, you have had a really cool, interesting franchise career. You've touched everything from being a franchisee to being to scaling a business, helping companies grow, and now you're consulting with tons and tons of 660, something like that. 660.
Last count, yeah, I think as of this morning.
Yeah, see, I can sense it. I felt it. Anyway, so Lance, I want to first dive in, and I really want to get to, I've watched a lot of your YouTube videos and all the questions they've asked you. So anybody who's watched your videos knows a lot about you already, because I geeked out on you for a little while. It happens. You go down that rabbit hole. You know what I mean? So here's what I want to do. I want to find out. Did you you went to college, right?
I did.
Did you graduate?
I graduated. I got an economics degree.
Okay, yeah, because you were, I knew you were thinking about going into accounting, or you just didn't want to get stuck into the cubicle, right?
Yep, that's it. That's exactly it.
Okay, so I want to talk about TGI Fridays because one of my first good jobs was at TGI Fridays as a waiter. It was one of my most memorable jobs. I made like $120 cash every night. We go out, party, hang out with the girls, and I just have such good memories there. And when I found out that you were there in the beginning, I'd like to hear that journey. Where'd you start off?
Yeah, well, so I was on Wall Street working for. Dad was a partner in a big Wall Street firm. Did that throughout the summers. When I made a decision to leave New York, had an opportunity to join another family friend that bought 4 TGI Fridays restaurants in Phoenix, Arizona. So I got an opportunity to, head west, leave New York. And, I thought I was going to be right into the management training program with TGI Fridays with his 4 locations. And he had pretty grand plans to grow this thing through acquisitions as well as new store openings. He had some pretty big plans to be a huge franchisee.
How many were there at the time?
Well, at the time, Fridays overall, I don't remember what the number was, several hundred TGI Fridays, but he only had the 4 at the time. 5 years later, it was 66 or 65 locations in different cities, a lot of acquisitions, many new store openings. But we were doing $225 million a year in those days after the 5-year period. I mean, Fridays in those days, as you remember, John, they had some pretty substantial volumes. I want to say the average unit volume back in the day might have been $2.5 million a store, but you're talking $2.50 a beer, not on happy hour.
Yeah, the big schooners.
Yeah. So I ended up getting coaxed down to Arizona, staying with a family friend and getting $9 an hour as a host at TGI Fridays.
Oh, well, they did you a service, I guess, right?
Well, and then I, like you just described, I had a lot of fun because I was not in the management training program yet.
Yeah. And
then eventually, pretty quickly, I got in what they called was the manager in development program, which was really a 6-month program. And I got fast tracked. Within 2.5 months, I became a manager for TGI Fridays.
Nice. And how long were you in the management before you started helping them expand? And how did you know how to do all that? I mean, do you have a mentor? Did you books?
Well, that's a good question. So, as this goes into the nature versus nurture argument as to how do people even become entrepreneurs.
Sure.
My family, both of my grandfathers were entrepreneurs. So I knew I think my father clearly defined for me when I was young, you're probably going to be unemployable, so you might as well be your own boss. So, yeah. So, when I joined TGI Fridays, it was a family friend that owned it. And he saw a lot of things in me because he knew me for many years. But he had to hire somebody that had a TGI Fridays background that was Fridays certified, of course. And by the way, that gentleman I'm still very close with to this day. Awesome. And he refers me a lot of my consulting clients, so I'm thankful for him. So I got fast tracked through the management training program, and Steven, who was the CEO of our franchise and the majority owner, he used to pull me into a lot of meetings because I came out to do this because of him. But I still also had duties as a manager. I was assistant manager, eventually an AGM, a GM, an area manager. So, but Ken, who really was running this thing, knew that, I had kind of the fast track, the bat phone, if you will. Steven's going to call and say, "Hey, I'm negotiating a deal on a new location in Scottsdale. I want you to hear how I do this." So I really learned from Steven, and Steven was from Brooklyn, so I loved his negotiating skills.
Yeah, fast and hard, I'm sure.
You got it.
And so, wow, that's a lucky break right there. I mean, to get in.
It was. No, it was the old who and that's really what it comes down to is take advantage of who you know. I mean, who I knew got me on Wall Street in the first place with Dad's company. He was a big partner in a Wall Street firm, but you got to like what you're doing. And that was boring to me. And I felt like it's something that you can make a lot of money, but it wasn't always about that. Now, John, to be honest, if I had to do it over again, I probably would have stayed on Wall Street for 10 years, banked a ton of money, and not have to deal with crazy partners and things that I put myself into. The restaurant business is a hard life because you need capital. You got to rely on other people's capital if you don't have it all on your own.
Yeah. And that's just one part of it. The other part is dealing with crazy. Everything in the restaurant business is crazy. I mean, I've been in it for 15 years, and before owning for 15 years, before that working in it. Yeah, I wish I would have went to and did something else too sometimes. But then, I sometimes I wonder, would I have been good at anything I did, at anything, because I would have put 100% of my energy into it, or because you kind of like get thrown into things without realizing why it's happening, and then you can only look back and say, oh, shoulda, woulda, coulda. But
yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
sorry.
I was going to say, it's really about mastering those aspects. The restaurant business, when you break it down, the old expression, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Well, if you get thrown into the restaurant business and management without appropriate training, it's like being thrown to the wolves. You're going to get eaten alive. You're not going to know what the hell's going on. But when you think methodically and break down the restaurant business and you really understand, how to cook and how to set up a line, doesn't matter whether you're selling ribs or chicken wings or donuts. It's pretty much the same. And that's why today I do a lot of consulting for emerging restaurant brands, especially franchise brands, because I have that vision. I understand what they need to understand 3 years from now that maybe they can't even think 2 months ahead. And that's just because they haven't done it yet. You know how that goes.
Yeah. When I was watching your videos, I was thinking I'm sure, I don't know if you ever think of Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Very
of course.
Yeah. The first chapter, how he talks about Edwin C. Barnes, who made up his mind to go work with Thomas Edison.
Right.
I don't know if you know that story, but it's probably been a while. But we're definitely going to be working together, me and you, because you know what? Let me tell you, with Pink Box and TGI Fridays, and then you've had some burger company, I forget the name of it, and now you're consulting all these companies. I mean, you're the guy I've been looking for. Let me tell you why. You go to these. I have a lot of. I'm in Chicagoland area. I don't know where do you live right now.
I'm in Vegas.
Oh, Vegas, baby. I go
Florida next week. Vegas right now.
But you live in Vegas.
I live in Vegas.
Yeah. That's where you started Pink Box.
That's right.
I go to Vegas every year, pretty much for the Pizza Expo. So
love it. Been there many times.
I'm sure you have. But in that sense, you want to talk. You need a mentor in life. You need somebody to talk to who can brainstorm, kind of knock ideas back and forth and kind of keep you on track. But nobody's done what this is. A lot of people they're consultants. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. They don't know. They've never been in the grind.
Yep.
Been in the grind. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. They're talking about like a master's MBA program response. I don't need that. That's not real. Right.
You're 100% right. I have a buddy that had a nice chain, that he owned, sold, had a great exit, made some money. Now he's in the midst of a new thing. I got a text from him yesterday. Hey, you got time for me? I need a brainstorm. Exactly what you're talking about. So this afternoon, we're going to brainstorm. He's got multiple new restaurant concepts he's rolling out in Southern California. And I love helping people. I love getting a little piece of the action whenever I can do it. If I don't have to charge anybody, consulting fees, I take some equity back. But I love helping great people. That's the key.
Yeah. And that's the key, right? Plus it's fun. I remember listening to you and saying how you get bored really easily, and I'm the same way. So you got to keep things, you have to have action. Otherwise you want to move on.
That's exactly right. I mean, being a franchise consultant, franchise broker, like I am, representing more brands than anybody, it's exciting because I just get off the phone with one guy. I'm talking about IV infusion brands, talking to somebody else. When I get off with you, talking about restaurants. And, my goal is to connect them and find them their perfect franchise. It either happens quickly or it takes a long time. And people turn over left and right. I stay in on purpose. I stay in touch with these people as they go on their journey. And because I've done a good job with them, they refer new people to me. So it's always new and fresh.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a good circle. Now, with regards to so let's just say, I have a friend who has a hot dog stand and he wants to open up. He does well, and he wants to franchise. And this is actually a situation. This is actually really happening. And I was telling him that, from my opinion, franchising doesn't have to be extremely expensive. It can be fairly reasonable. If you go to there's a couple of companies out here that sharks, we call them over. You go there and say, $270,000 and we'll run the whole thing for you. I said, well, you didn't even ask us how much our sales are. You didn't ask any questions. They didn't even know who we were. They just wanted
That's when you know there's a problem. They didn't ask any questions.
They didn't ask anything. I mean, they asked my name and they brought out like 7 or 8 people.
Yeah.
They all look like they just got out of high school. And I'm just like, what the hell are you doing? My point is that there's a lot of scammers out there. But to franchise, franchising, people get intimidated by it. It's actually pretty easy to do. You just got to follow the rules, right? But the problem is the systems and procedures. That to me is so hard. Do you bring in companies to kind of help people do that, or do you write it up yourself?
I do it.
That's a lot of pages of things.
It's a lot of pages. I have one of my best friends has been setting up franchise brands for years, and he does what I do. He has a team of about 27 people to be exact, scattered throughout the country. Some of them are focused in his main office in the Northeast in Atlanta. And what he does, unlike just a pure play law firm, he handles everything from the sales aspects, kind of from the end, what is the end result that we're looking to achieve here? And the answer is selling franchises. So I bring a lot of business to him. But the short answer to your question is it can be very affordable. It can be $30,000, $35,000 to set up an entire franchise system. And we're talking the franchise disclosure document, the franchise agreement, in addition to the operations manual. The operations manual, of course, included.
Wow.
Let's call it $35,000, $36,000.
Sure.
And we'll do payment plans because it's going to take us 120 days to set this whole thing up. And in the midst of that, look, we have a whole team of people that will take it piece by piece by piece. We start off with the business planning. I mean, obviously, John, to your earlier point, there's serious conversations first to make sure that these people are actually right. I'll give you a live story. I set up a now famous cheesesteak brand in downtown Atlanta with an incredible business. I mean, it was their business, not mine, but they were easy to set up because they had something. They had something big. And in fact, they're not even franchising at the moment, even though they're set up because they're building corporate stores. They're outrageously successful. They have enough capital. So they said, let's just set up some more corporate stores first, which is fine, which is great. But they referred me to a nice young lady that has a couple of salon suites concepts. The first question I asked John is, really, what is your secret sauce? and I don't mean it literally, of course, if you're not in the restaurant business, but what is the secret to your brand? What is so proprietary that you created something that different that you're better than the competition? Is it that, if you're in the restaurant business, it's because you have the fastest drive-through or you have some unique sauces. You tell me, what's Papa Ray's secret sauce?
I would say there's a couple of things that differentiate us. But one is we're home of the monster slice. So when you come in a matter of 3 to 4 minutes, you'll get a slice that's about the size of your head, 12 inches about, and a free pop comes with it for $5.
Love it. But that is part of what your secret to success is right there, and your secret sauce. So the Salon Suites lady came to us, and she's fantastic, and she said she can build it, less expensive than some of these other salon suite concepts, and she's built a name for herself, and she has a nice social media presence. So she was a good candidate. She already had 2 successful locations. She had a system set up. We had to refine some things, of course. We're always going to do that. But then again, I have a company from the UK right now with almost 30 locations. And I'm in final discussions with them to bring them to the US and handle their expansion to the US. Well, they're pretty well established. They just have no presence in the United States. So that's just another example. So I do every single thing when it comes to franchising, whether you're a restaurant or not. But John, as you know, being old dogs in the restaurant business, when you can do well in restaurants, you can do well in anything.
Well, I hope that's true. I haven't really touched too many other things, but I have a marketing company for my franchisees. But I also realize that there's a lot of other people who want to know about, because I built my businesses a lot on the backs of direct mail marketing, digital marketing in conjunction with that, but mostly direct mail, especially with the pizza business. It really works the best.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so people laugh at that sometimes because they think it's all social media now. And I'm like, yeah, social media gets you impressions, but you can't deposit impressions. I need to get cash into the bank.
People that are visual and physical folks, when they get that in their hands, they get the right advertisement in their hands. It's still very effective.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So here's what I want to go with this now. I want to ask you, so one of the things that I'm coming across as a franchisor is that I treat the franchisees' money as if it's my own money. And so one of the ways that I've done that is, but I've been allowing that, I've always done this myself. So I allowed all the franchisees to use old restaurants and convert them into Papa Ray's Pizza. Even distributed on the inside, walk-in coolers, anything we can use, we'll use it as long as it's in good condition. The problem with that is that sometimes it creates inefficiencies with consistency. Like the consistency gets compromised because of that sometimes. But I'm saving them like $100,000 by doing this.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that?
So my initial thought is this. There's a certain level of integrity that every brand has, not only in their look and feel and decor, but also in their mode of operation. I was a Wingstop franchisee. The line has to be set up a certain way, otherwise it's inefficient. You obviously can't have your sandwich top too far away from your fryers. It doesn't make any sense. The sandwich top was the heart of that kitchen. So if I understood your operation specifically, and you can give me a tour of it another time, and I could see it virtual, through a Zoom call just as easily, or FaceTime. But you have to have standards when it comes to the kitchen operation and the method of serving people and getting the food out of the kitchen. And at the end of the day, I love the idea of sort of rehashing and using second generation space, because as you certainly know, there are plenty of brands out there, that are going to knock down an entire building, especially if it's a fast food, QSR type brand. They're not going to stand for using an existing space. They'll knock down a building and rebuild it from scratch and build it exactly like the plan they have in the drawer next to them.
I know, it's crazy.
And the franchisees, John, are going to be like, what are you kidding? And in some cases, it's good because everything's new. You're not dealing with old. But look, in the restaurant business, saving money becomes important, and giving back that value to your customers. So the answer really is you have to understand what's sacred in your kitchen and your mode of operation. And even in a second generation space that you're rehabbing, you need to make sure that you still have the ability to service the people in the way you're used to in that brand new Papa Ray's, as an example. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't compromise what's sacred, but anything else on the fringes, you can be a little more flexible.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, there's, whether it's a signage package, like a sign that hangs in the window or an exterior sign, when you make those parts of the package, again, the gospel, like it has to happen. Let's say you have a fancy neon sign that in some areas, maybe it's not allowed. Then, I love to be really proactive, and you get the city involved, you get the landlord involved and say, look, it's a Papa Ray's. I have to have this specific sign. Otherwise it's not happening here. So, your standards are your standards. If you want to be flexible, that's fine. Remember the early days of Starbucks? They didn't want, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but they didn't want to do drive-throughs. They wanted people to experience the service, the aroma of the coffee. They wanted to hear the name being, called. Hey, John, I got your coffee. And then what happened years later when it became a publicly traded company? It changed. It was all about, they didn't have to be a destination to customers. They were then a convenience. That's a big thing in the restaurant business. I talk to people, and I feel like I preach to people, get on my soapbox and say, are you a destination or are you a convenience? In the early days of Starbucks, they were a destination. They made a conscious effort to say, we will be a destination. Once they were publicly traded, they made a decision to go after the money, which there's nothing wrong with. We're all in business to make some money. And that was, we're not going to be a destination anymore. We're going to be the ultimate convenience for people. They added sandwiches and food and all this stuff. And, that's the restaurant business.
Yeah. Yeah. True. You got to adapt. You got to change. And as you get, different, you have different phases of your life. I mean, when you're different when you're a teenager than when you are as a 30-year-old, as you are as a 7-year-old. So
I was going to say, not very many brands can stay exactly the same, like In-N-Out Burger on the West Coast. Can stay exactly the same.
They haven't grown like McDonald's. I mean, if they would have adapted, but see, it depends on what you want, right? They're already billionaires. They don't need much more. So I guess it just depends on what kind of lifestyle you want.
Exactly.
And I kind of want to just stick on this part a little bit. So a developing franchise, somebody decides to franchise, you do the operation. Operations manuals are very, very particular, and they're constantly fluid. So they're always changing. So
exactly.
So do you like send people to the restaurant, or do you just give them lots of questionnaires? How do you do that?
No, people will definitely do some observations in the restaurant, but typically, depending on what stage a restaurant is at, when we're doing the ops manual, even if they have one location, they clearly have a methodology to do everything, So sure, we'll rip apart their recipe book to understand how they're prepping things and make sure that's included, because as you certainly know, John, every franchisee needs to know how to do everything. It's your Bible, essentially, to how you operate. So we have quite a few templates we'll give people and sort of cheat sheets to inspire them to give us their proprietary information to make sure that it's all included. Because at the end of the day, a franchisee doesn't actually, they'll see the franchise disclosure document and the franchise agreement before they become franchisees. But they're not going to see the ops manual that's very private and confidential information until they become a franchisee. So that's where everything's really revealed. And like you said, it's very fluid. It's going to change often. I mean, I remember the first ops manual for Wingstop that I had, and it there was a recipe book, and the rest was like, be nice to customers. And it really wasn't much. I mean, there was, for the cleaning, the cleaning was, refer to the manufacturer's specs on how to clean the fryer. I mean, it was, not much. There wasn't much meat to it, and it evolved over the years, of course.
Yeah. Wingstop's an interesting. I researched Antonio Swad a little bit, right? He was the founder.
He was.
Yeah, and Pizza Patron, and
yep.
So, he's I'm going to try and get him on the podcast one day. He's a very interesting guy.
Yeah, for sure.
So now FDD is done, franchise agreement is done, the operations manual has been completed. We're 120 days in. Mm-hmm. Lance, now it's time to sell franchises. Now, what I did to sell some of my franchises, and I paused for a while. Now I just ramped it back up. Franchise Gator, Franchise Direct. I tried to go the broker route. That didn't really work out, but just putting it on the line, paid leads, and then sifting through them, one out of 100 would be, would good. You know what I mean? It was like
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. You're pretty much 1 in 100, and you got and look, and what 50% of the people that you contact of those 100 leads, 50 of them aren't even going to answer your, contact via email, text, phone call.
You just cost me $40, Jared. Come on, at least answer the call. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation. You don't have to like me. No, I'm just joking. But I just Franchise Gator and Franchise Direct. I said, listen, if they're duds, will you give refunds? And they said, yeah. So,
yeah. No, it's an interesting world today, and because as you would remember in the old days, I'm sure I'm much older than you, but in the old days,
how old are you? Hold on,
54.
Okay, I'm 37.
Exactly. So in the old days, it was all about conventions. And it was all about your Rolodex, even before brokers. I mean, brokers like me exist because of lead generation and Google and technology, but in the old days, it was up to the inside salesperson at the brand to have his or her team get around to conventions and meet people. And you'd have a booth, or you'd get in a big fat publication that was that big. It was all about direct mail in those days, right?
Yeah, but Lance, that's still going on.
Oh, absolutely. It was only about that stuff in the old days. And nowadays you can do Facebook ads. You can have an incredible website. I have a brand that feeds me all their leads because the founder doesn't want to do it himself. And he has a incredibly highly optimized website. They load it with content, and everybody looking for a certain brand, it's an IV infusion brand, they get tripped up on his website in the top 10. They fill out an inquiry and it comes to me. So that's the way to do it. I mean, you're paying a lot of money for it, but you're not paying for the leads directly. And they're falling on your website. And it's a lot of ways to do it today, and everybody's got to take a pretty well-rounded approach. For me, podcasting is great because I get so many inquiries. I have a free assessment on my website. I would imagine some people from your site that are interested in finding their perfect franchise, they'll go and do the free assessment on my website. I'll hit them up and say, hey, thanks for filling that out, John. Let's schedule a call. But quite a bit of my business is also setting independent businesses up to franchise. And like I said, we have the best packages in the industry. And my plan is that not only we set them up for franchising, but they want us to then sell for them. You mentioned earlier, I mean, there are people that don't want to use broker networks because, they have to give a piece of the pie to the brokers. Well, it depends what your goal is. Are you looking to grow, get 2 franchisees a year and, you happen upon them from some paid ads? That's great. More power to you. But if you really want to grow more significantly, share a little bit of it. Because as you know, John, the value of a franchise brand, a franchisor like yourself, isn't in your franchise fee. The value's in your royalty stream. And at the end of the day, the race, and I don't want to say it's the precarious race or a hasty, can't run too fast to get there type race, but it's, when you get there and you get to 100 locations or even 50 locations with a nice royalty stream, franchisors are worth 10 times cash flow typically. I mean, that's what it's been in the last couple of years, sometimes even more. So that's a pretty substantial number, and that's purely based on royalties.
Yeah. Definitely.
So everybody's got a different opinion and feeling as a franchisor, about brokers and which brokers and how do you do it. And, so I think, look, it's exposure and how much you're willing to put yourself out there. I mean, get a Facebook ad, nice video in a Facebook ad with a solid franchisee telling about their wonderful experience with your brand, that tends to sell. And with Facebook, at least you can be very geographically specific, looking for entrepreneurs, looking for male, female, but whoever,
Yeah, absolutely. And my school of thought, and I've been taught this, is that, that funnel needs to be full. And you need to and that 25,000, 20,000, 30,000 franchise fee, whatever that number may be, is not yours. That's simply a marketing tool. That is simply the training, the travel expenses, the employees that you got to bring, the team. So you never count that. It should just be part of the process. The royalties is what the goal is. Keep it going.
Absolutely. It's your monthly committed investment in yourself.
Yes, exactly. And so tell me about how Ion Franchise does the sales process. Where do you handle the marketing dollars as well? And if so, I mean, you just told me how you would spend some of it.
Yeah.
What is the average return? Like, how many places do you market to, and how many leads do you get, and how many can you sell based off of the for a restaurant, typical restaurant, based off of the marketing budget? Sorry.
I don't think you'll be shocked to hear this, but like you alluded to earlier with some companies that don't necessarily ask you any questions. For me, the biggest question, of course, is, where are you now? How's your infrastructure set up? And then within that, what is your goal?
You want to know all that?
Yes, I do. Where do you, and also, as your podcast is called, Always Direct, that's me as well, being a former New Yorker. I'm going to tell people, I'm going to ask permission to be very honest with them on where I think they are. Because look, at the end of the day, I'll just use an example from your industry, Little Caesars. It's not necessarily the best pizza in the world. Is that fair to say?
I won't talk bad about that, but yeah, we don't eat that stuff here.
Well, it's not the worst pizza in the world by any stretch. However, they're a tremendous brand. They've done very, very well in the low cost pizza world.
Yes.
When I talk to other people at the early stage, are they really ready to ramp up? If somebody tells me, look, I want to sell 12 deals in 2021. Here we are early enough in January, they still can. So they want to sell 12 deals. Well, within that, there's quite a bit of marketing that goes into that, because how are we getting those, even if you use your math, which is definitely accurate, 1 in 100, and you want to sell 12 deals. How many leads do you need, generally speaking?
100.
Thousands.
100 times whatever, 12.
Yeah, thousands of leads. So the bottom line is, knowing that, we have to get them exposure. I look at their website. Is their website set up? And at the end of the day, I have referral sources, friends that I can say that do franchise marketing to say, look, you got to do something with your website. Now, to fully optimize and spend the money on the website to get it right, to do blog posts, everything else, you can have somebody do the writing, because probably, more than likely you're not doing it. Do you have anybody in marketing that can do it? So we kind of just tear the whole thing down. It's like, the layers of that onion, so to speak, to look at who can help you and who your resources are. At the end of the day, it's all about resourcing up. It's now time, and you said it perfectly. You got to invest your money. It takes money to make money. So you can't expect that a broker is going to work with you with no marketing background. So I need backup. So whether you spend the money on marketing or I spend the money on your money on marketing, that's another story, Now, because I represent so many different brands, it's possible that depending on the industry and depending on the commission structure, because that's the other piece too.
Yeah.
If I love a brand and I can get a higher commission, and I'm not talking about being greedy, I'm talking about from a business standpoint where it makes sense, where they can't spend the money on marketing. And I talked to somebody just the other day that probably fits this. They might, or does fit this. They don't necessarily have all the money to spend on marketing, but this is somebody very experienced in a very specific industry. So I might take a higher commission, spend the marketing dollars out of my pocket to get them leads, to get them the results that they're looking for. But now I have a higher commission. So, and I'm I'm as confident in my ability as anybody's, obviously. I know what I can do.
Right.
So it's worth it to me. It's, in a way, I feel like, I have some equity in the deal. And I've actually taken some equity in some businesses because I felt strongly in the business, and, it was a good negotiation. So there's a lot of ways to do it, but marketing is definitely part of it. So in most cases, the brand's spending some marketing dollars. But look, here's the reality, John. They don't have to write me a check for $3,500 for the marketing fund every month. for myself and my team to spend money on. They could spend the money on sources that I think are similar to what I would be doing. Doesn't matter. I'm not making any money on the marketing. I typically am not charging people a retainer. There's some other brands out there, other companies that will charge you some sort of retainer, like an attorney would, to retain their services. I don't believe in that. I believe that, it's just like in contract with contracts. Unless I'm spending a lot of money on marketing for you, specifically for you, and I need to see a return on that, if I'm spending the money, then there would be a contract. But in most cases, not even any kind of contract, because I know I'm going to do a good job. You're going to want to stay with me. Make sense?
Damn right. Of course it makes sense.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a quick question about, so what is IM Franchising charge to do the sales? What's the commission structure like to open 10 a year? And let's say everything else falls in line. You say, yeah, we're ready to go. We want to open 10 a year. Papa Ray's wants to open 10 a year.
Yeah.
What would be the standard charge?
My average commission is close to 20 grand. 18 to 20 grand is my average commission. But in the restaurant business, it's definitely lower. Why is that? Well, typically the franchise fees, restaurants are some of the most expensive investments. So the franchise fees, believe it or not, tend to be a little bit lower because, and the commissions tend to be a little bit lower. So with restaurants, could be closer to 15, somewhere in that neighborhood. Sure. But again, there's literally nothing out of pocket for anybody to get involved with me except the marketing expense. And that's again, it doesn't have to be paid to me. If you can show me that you have a good group that can do Facebook ads for you and you're going to work on your website a little bit, things like that, because at the end of the day, when people see something on your brand and they go back to a crappy website or whatever, they don't take you as seriously. And there's just too many great franchises out there. You need to be able to stand out. Now, you can have a crappy website if you got 300,000 people following you on Instagram, sure, because you have some sort of credibility on social media. You have that social proof. It is a balancing act. But if you have no social media presence, you have no, website that's worth a shit, how could people really take you seriously that you're going to invest in and focus on them and their success, because you're not really even focused so much on yours. So that's part of it.
Yeah, I love it. I've learned a lot so far. I mean, I could talk to you for 4 hours, but I know you're a busy man.
No, but John, seriously, for people, I tell people, look, if you're serious, just pick up the phone. We'll have a conversation. I speak to people all the time. I'm setting up two different franchise groups right now. My team is that heard me on podcasts just like this, and they're successful entrepreneurs in their own right. One guy's in the Midwest, another guy's in Canada. We're bringing him to the U.S. And actually, we're doing international deals with him. The first deal that we're setting up for him is in Norway.
Interesting. I this year is so we took a couple of years. I took years off because I got a little burnt out from the restaurant business for a while. I took a little time off, and I'm back now with a vengeance. And we never really just did the whole item 19 because we really didn't need to. But this year I decided to do it. So 2021, I'm putting the item 19 out there. I did hire a salesperson for my always direct mail or always direct marketing team, but I was going to use them for also following up with leads for the franchising. But it would be, to have that, you kind of need somebody who knows a lot. And so I don't know if that's going to work out or not, but I think it's a no-brainer, right? It's a no-brainer to get somebody on the team who knows what the hell they're doing, has been a seasoned veteran, who really, and plus can guide you. So while you're selling, you're also giving advice. I mean, it's just coming naturally.
Absolutely. 100%.
It's like free counseling. You know what I mean?
No, you are 100% correct. I mean, I tell people it's kind of like, look at the best coaches in baseball and football. Most of them played the game, right? Most of them, I mean, I would imagine a few of them were just lifelong coaches, but it's the same thing with me. I've been a franchisee. I've been, multiple brands. I've created my own concepts. So who better to coach you? And, that's should be what makes sense to most people.
I got a question. So if I know these are just rough numbers, but let's say, hey, Lance, this year, Papa Ray's or Frankie's hot dog stand wants to sell 10 franchises per year on average. Okay. What kind of marketing budget would you recommend that you think would target? And I know it's rough numbers and it's not exact science.
Well, I just did a proposal for somebody. I threw out that $3,500 a month number earlier to you for a reason. There was somebody that wanted to sell 12. And we said, based on what we know in our network and our reach, because, look, I don't want to say luck plays a role in this, but because I represent so many brands and I have so many leads that come in for other brands, it does happen that I get a lead in for one brand and for whatever reason, it's not a match. But then I look at Papa Ray's and it's a match.
Yeah.
So you get lucky sometimes and being in the right place at the right time. So the answer to your question is that $3,500 a month or so will get you 10 to 12 locations, all things, sort of being equal. $3,500 a month. So do the math on, whatever that is annualized, 40 grand.
That's not bad at all. It's not bad at all.
No. Considering what's your franchise fee?
25 right now.
Okay. Yeah. And do you give a discount for multi-unit?
I believe it's 12.5, and in veteran 12.5.
Yeah. Good. So, very fair.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? So here's my next question. So let's just say, how are we doing on time? Are you good?
I'm great.
Okay. Let's just say, so what I just did, and I'm sure that most people, they want to sell nationwide, but I've gotten conflicting advice on that part. So if somebody was looking to grow scale their business and they want to do all the unregistered all unregistration states, and then any of the surrounding regional states, which would make sense because you want to stay, as local as possible, but you also can't, it's hard to say no if somebody says, I want to open a one-off in Texas or, one of the Ohio. So what's your recommendation on that? Do you say stay away from those, or do you say, well, force them to do a 2-store deal or cut them a good deal to open 2 stores? What's your strategy with, because, when you're young and hungry, it's hard to say no.
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, like we got in the discussion about what's sacred in the kitchen and the setup and all that and the design, it's the same exact thing when it comes to the geographic integrity and how you need to grow. And what I mean by that is I'm working with a young company right now in the Northeast that is planning that right now. So they never went with a big distributor like Cisco or US Foods, because a lot of it, the answer to your question is driven by purchasing, depending on the brand. If you're a commodity type, let's say you were a pizza concept 100% from scratch. Let's say you were, which I don't know that exists anymore, but let's say you're 100% from scratch. The only thing proprietary is that you have logoed boxes and bags, and that's it. You could literally go anywhere in this country tomorrow because any distributor can get you, high gluten flour, canned, your specific canned crushed tomatoes, more than likely, right? I mean, you can go on and on. It's pretty easy to set up a from scratch restaurant concept anywhere in the country at a moment's notice. The problem is that most franchised restaurant concepts have quite a few proprietary items that are very specific to them for whatever reason, right? So if that's the case, how easy is it going to be going from, New York to Texas when all you have is, let's say, 3 locations? I'm just making up things here.
Yeah.
It's incredibly difficult because Cisco or US Foods or whoever your big distributor is going to be is not really going to be a fan of jumping states like that, because now they have to stock your inventory, your complete customized proprietary inventory for you in Texas. They're going to tell you in the beginning it's fine, but what they want is growth.
Yeah.
So what I tell people is it is much easier to create a critical mass of at least your first 10 locations in at least a similar area. So if you started in New York, then grow those first 10 between New York, New Jersey, Connecticut.
Sure.
Even if it's a different Cisco outlet, OpCo, you're in a similar region. It's close enough. And that's what I tell people. So that's kind of the long answer, but it's Can you jump states? Of course you can. But if you're going to jump states, you have to be 100% correct in that the person that you're signing in Texas, in your example, is going to be phenomenal for your brand, even if it was a single unit. Are they going to market properly? Are they going to do what's right? I'll never forget, I was with Fatburger a million years ago with Fatburger as an executive. And, not that California and the Seattle market are so far away. They're not. But we didn't have anybody in Seattle. And we had a guy come to us and did a 3-unit deal. He was phenomenal. And he operated some of the best Fatburgers anywhere and in Washington State. And so that was a no-brainer. He was passionate. He was smart. He had another business. It was non-food. But this guy was an amazing operator. So it was a no-brainer. And for years, Fatburger wouldn't leave California. So that's a case where it worked.
Very interesting. Very interesting, Lance.
So what I also do is I'll get into the purchasing side. And I know the buying group personally who represents Cisco, for example. And I just called the president of that company the other day in the Midwest and said, look, I got a new client in New York that I'd love to talk about, send you their list so you can kind of dive in and give me advice on how we're going to set this up for them successfully. They have, quick, fast growth plans. And let's take a shot at this and see how much Cisco's already going to stock and how much is proprietary, because it's those proprietary items that make it pretty difficult.
So are you the one who's actually doing the selling yourself?
I do. I certainly do because I enjoy doing it, and I have plenty of other people that do it as well.
Okay. And are you going to be? So are you? How involved? I mean, 650 clients. Those are people who are advertising with you, right? That's a lot.
Well, no. Those are part of my broker networks. So I kind of cross broker. I am part of the largest franchise consulting organization in the U.S. In fact, I'm a trainer for that organization. I train new consultants as well. That's called FranServe. They're out of New Jersey. So FranServe on its own represents about 540 brands these days. And I have multiple other deals with other brokers. Some are restaurant only. Some are pretty famous. Some are smaller. And they're all over the country. And so, yeah, ramping that up is about 660 brands or so right now. I'd have to count. So basically, the idea here is there are other people besides myself that manage these accounts, but I have the ability to sell for these brands, and my team has the ability to sell for these brands for the purposes of what we talked about earlier, John, to expedite, their growth strategy, because there's a lot of brands, large and small, that love the broker networks because there's not a lot of heavy lifting. They join the broker networks, they put out email blasts to brokers, they put out commission incentives, they put out new FDD information to entice people to sell for them. So, there's a lot of reasons to partner with brokers. You can certainly do it on your own. You're just going to have to hire people to do it for you that are working for you, if that's the case.
Yeah. Okay, so let me ask you one last question, and then I got a couple of just one-offs to get your.
You got it.
So, to have a smaller organization grow 10 locations a year, 10 to 15 locations a year. What kind of staff would you say? Because sometimes you want to run lean and mean, but you have to be able to give proper training, proper assistance, and not let balls be dropped, and then also not neglect the existing clients that you have. So it's a kind of a juggling act if you're doing it with a tight ship. So you need to not only spend the money on all that growth, but you also need to spend money on people sitting around waiting for the growth.
Yeah, and that all comes with setting up your standards. So if your standard is to visit a franchise shop, I mean, do you currently have, in your example, in your world, John, do you currently have franchise business consultants or folks going around visiting stores?
I do. But a lot of times it's me, myself, actually. I have 4 franchisees, 1 corporate store, and then we're opening up 2 more right now. And it's all me, my brother. And I have an assistant, and I have 2 assistants, me and my brother.
And it was, and I knew you obviously had somebody doing it, and I suspected it was probably more you than anyone else at this point. So I think
I shouldn't do it though. I don't want to do it because it creates a strange dynamic between. I don't want to be that guy who's walking into the store and I don't want to be the health inspector. I want to be the president of the company.
Right. Well, but then, look, first of all, you asked a great question. There's a ton of information to unpack in this answer, but the short answer is you have to set the standard as to how you conduct your business with the 4 franchisees you have now, matched up with more or less the vision you initially had when you set out to do this in the first place, and where that is, from then to till today. I always advocate, by the way, doing surprise visits as much as also doing announced visits. You shouldn't only do surprise visits. You should have those appointments where you go to visit somebody. It's always interesting what the differences might be if between those visits. But I think when you set the standard as to how often you're going to visit people, how often you're having meetings, phone calls, Zoom calls, talking about advertising, marketing, I think if you then said, okay, now I'm going to have 10 new people. Well, the beauty of franchising in the restaurant business is if you sign somebody tomorrow, chances are from the time they sign till the time they open a store is probably going to be 120 days minimum, right?
Easy. Yeah.
So, unless of course they have the real estate already and, which is rare, then you have a pretty substantial ramp up period for that next franchisee, and then the next one, and then the next one. So the answer really is it depends. It depends on your level of service and standards, the standards that you're setting for your franchisees and what you want to accomplish. I would definitely recommend you pull yourself out entirely from visiting stores as soon as you start ramping up for franchising, and make yourself available for those franchisees that need to call you for the important things. But here's the beauty of a ramped up, fast growing franchise system. If you have the right distributor, you could start all of a sudden handing sort of discounts, if you will, to existing franchisees. Maybe now cheese drops, 3 cents a pound because, your buying power increases. There's a lot of fun things that start to happen where you get to renegotiate with your manufacturers. And by the way, I always recommend that. Go to the manufacturers and renegotiate your deal. Don't go to the distributor. It's always based on your manufacturer because they're the ones that have the power to offer that price deviation. The distributors don't care. Whatever your price is, they just mark it up, 9% to 12% anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm lucky my brother's excellent at that. That's what he does.
Yep. So yeah, it depends. But yeah, you have to build up the infrastructure. Look, there's a brand out there that I was looking at recently that's in my portfolio. It's in one of the brokers' portfolios. And I had people that were very interested in it. And they asked me directly, what is your opinion of that brand? And I said, they only have 2 locations open. And last I heard, well, they told me this, that they sold like 150 franchisees already, 150 deals done, but they only have 2 open. Is that scary to you? Should be.
How is that possible? I mean,
exactly.
What is it? Is it a home-based business? Then it wouldn't be as scary.
It's not.
Okay, well then
it's not. Well, even a home-based business. Well, I guess it probably wouldn't be scary as a home-based business because you can do a series of Zoom calls and train people remotely all day. So I guess all I'm saying is your infrastructure certainly has to match. As you certainly know, the 2 biggest things that franchisees will complain about is the overall support they get from the franchisor and marketing.
Yeah.
Where's my money going? It seems like it's a never ending. It's like the question I hear all the time. What the hell do they do with my marketing money? And it shouldn't be like that. If you can answer all those questions and then also support, what is reality versus expectations? What is the standard that you're setting for them? And I'm not saying you have to baby them, but there are plenty of brands that do, that offer a lot of extra support. When I opened one of the highest volume Wingstops ever in the history of Wingstop, they offered to send me back more trainers to support. But by that time, it was store number 4 for me. And I had an amazing team. And I said, that's all right. I'm good. Thanks. We're great.
They were so happy. They were so excited.
But they're happy because they're collecting some big fat royalties off that big store.
That's what I mean. And you don't want help? Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
You're like the ideal candidate.
Exactly.
All right. I'm gonna ask these short answer questions, just curious, and we'll see where we go from there. And then we're gonna end this podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Blonde.
Okay, there's
Jack Daniels.
All right. What's on your bucket list that you haven't done yet? Give me one or two things.
I still want to build a $100 million Fridays. I said Fridays. What a Freudian slip. I want to build about $100 million franchise company with me as the franchisee. Just assemble a bunch of great brands and just become a franchisee for those brands. I also have that same bucket list wish for the restaurant business. I have quite a few restaurant concepts planned, and we'll see if I can make time to have them be born, because they're quite unique and I already know how to do it. It's just, setting up the right financing vehicle and marketing it across the country. So, franchising is so wonderful. I mean, it sounds so sappy, but the reality is when you find the right system to be able to just pay, 5%, 6%, 7%, and some people get a little skittish on, why am I paying 7%? Well, at the end of the day, it's about how much money you can actually make doing this, and if the margins aren't that good, brands are not going to charge that royalty to starve you. I mean, they want you to be successful. The only way they exit successfully is when their franchise organization is growing and doing well. So yeah, those are some, look, Ion franchising is going to continue to grow. We have some tremendous momentum in times of adversity, as we've been going through. People are looking to break out and do new things. Unfortunately, people are unemployed. At least half of my business are what I call corporate refugees, people looking to break out of the corporate world. And look, some people are very passionate, John, as you know, about a specific industry, or at least they think they are. I like to get people passionate about a profit path in a specific industry, because most people that get into franchising end up buying something that they didn't even know anything about, which is the magic of franchising, because it just takes a smart person. It's an easy recipe, a smart individual that's going to follow somebody else's system and execute it to the nines. That's all it is. So modeling success, as I always say.
Do you recommend college in this 2021 market?
What I like about college is the fact that it proves that somebody can actually accomplish something. And notice, we're not talking about, you don't have to go to Harvard or Cornell or Yale, where you're going to spend a fortune. Go to community college for a couple of years that anybody can afford. Get 2 years, knock 2 years off your list, off the college thing, and then transfer for your final 2 years and get a degree in anything. It shows that you can accomplish something. And I think that's the start of accomplishing big things. Now, the reality is this: if you really feel like you don't fit and you hate it, if you hate something, you're never going to do it. You're never going to finish it. And it's going to be a struggle. So then don't bother. There's plenty of successful people that don't go to college. Is it a must? Of course, it's not a must. But I think the average person could and should go to college, get it done, cross it off. Just like everybody's got to go to high school, right? I mean, not too many people get out of high school before 12th grade, right?
Yeah. I have some different opinions about schooling, but yeah, I agree. I mean,
I think you learn. I think it's a safe opportunity to broaden your horizons, and it's always that one teacher or two teachers that really affect people. I had an economics professor that was fantastic, that gave me some ideas and concepts that I think I still hold sacred for myself. And you never know what you're going to learn. And being a lifelong learner, whether it's from Google or college or the School of Hard Knocks, learning is growing, and it's very important.
I'd like to say thank you so much, Lance, for coming on the show. You've been very informative, and I believe that anybody watching this in any business that's thinking about franchising, in the franchising business, franchisor or franchisee, can learn a lot just from hearing you speak. So
thank you, John. It's been a pleasure. Look forward to round 2 with you.
Thanks for listening to the Always Direct podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.